And really what we did was we would go into companies and really optimize our sales departments. What was different between us and other Sandler trainers was the fact that we really focused a lot more on the consulting side than we did the training. It was, 3 months after the pandemic had hit, and I was coming in from maternity leave, and I thought, what's next? I thought, what better time to start a business than while the economy's on the drain, while nobody's buying nothing, than now. Right? While I run my business, is one of the things that I still take away now, right? It's the fact that it's not so much what do you know, it's really what's going on internally that may stop you from doing the things that you know how to. Company first. Why a training company first? People don't know what to do when hiring salespeople, right? They throw stuff against the wall and they say, hey, well, hopefully this sticks. It wasn't so much, she's a woman, she's Hispanic. It was more your age, right? The fact that how is it that you get to sit here and talk to me about how to hire salespeople or how to increase my sales or how to optimize my sales department when you haven't owned a business yourself.
All right, everyone, welcome back to SALESBIZ. I appreciate you all, as always, taking the time. Before we kick it off, folks, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are not subscribed, go ahead and drop us some comments down below and like this if you find any value out of this content. Today, my guest is a professional coming out of Dallas. She is currently the founder and CEO of Improved Growth. Super excited to get to know her, share her knowledge, and talk about how this pandemic has been treating her business and her overall journey. Miss Brisa Renteria. Brisa, welcome.
You got it.
We've been practicing.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you taking the time, Brisa. Before we kick it off with your current company and everything you've done, let's talk a little bit about how it all started for you in the professional space.
Sure. So I graduated from the University of Texas in Arlington back in 2014. While I worked there, I worked for a social media company, and I had been working for that social media company for a couple of years by then. It's funny, I actually found the internship through Craigslist. Who finds internships at Craigslist, or who is willing to take an internship on Craigslist nowadays, right? But I did at the time. I was like 19 years old, so what the hell, right? So I had been with them for a while, social media, and it was funny because when I started with them, it was around when social media was somewhat new, right? And people thought social media, that stuff is not here to stay. It's just a fad. It'll be gone in a couple months, and it never went away. But I did that for several years. I found one of my best mentors, was just actually the CEO of the company at the time. And after I graduated college, I thought, I want to do something else. What else is out there? And the owner of that business and well networked, right? So business owner, and she knew a lot of people. So she knew that I was really trying to make a change to more of a sales type job. So she connected me to one of her CEO friends who was the owner of a sales training company. Uh-huh. Sandler Training, if anybody knows Sandler Training, right? There's a sales training methodology. So I worked for a franchise owner out of Dallas. I worked with him for several years. And really what we did was we would go into companies and really optimize our sales departments. What was different between us and other Sandler trainers was the fact that we really focused a lot more on the consulting side than we did the training, right? Because what we found was training a lot of times doesn't work. And it doesn't work because you may be training the wrong person, right? So you may come to me and say, hey, your stuff doesn't work. When it wasn't my stuff, it's the fact that we're training the wrong person. So we really looked at the company holistically, right? We took a look at what processes do you have in place, if any? What people do you have in place? Are they the right people for you to have? And if you have the right processes, the right people, then training makes sense in that sense, right? Because you're training the right people and you have a process to hold them accountable to. Right. So I worked with them, was lucky enough and blessed enough to be able to build a network, grow my business, and just kind of take it from there. So when 2020 hit, I thought, I had a baby 11 months ago. 11 months
Congratulations.
ago next week. Thank you. And she was born in June, and it was 3 months after the pandemic had hit, and I was coming in from maternity leave, and I thought, what's next? I knew I wasn't going to go back to the office, right? Because I have a little newborn and there's a pandemic and a bunch of different stuff. So I thought, what better time to start a business than while the economy's on the drain, while nobody's buying nothing than now, right? So that's really how Improved Growth was born. And it's really our focus is helping companies how to find strong salespeople. We are a training company first, to where we teach them how to do that. I come from a training background, obviously, so I truly believe in teaching people the skills that they need to be successful, so that in the long run, they won't need me. However, just because of the nature of the business, a lot of times they say, hey, I either don't have the time or the resources to do this. Can you go ahead and hire them for me? And we can find people for our clients as well. Then we would be using the same process that we would be teaching them if they were to go through the training process. So
Awesome.
that's a little bit about what I do.
Great. Usually when I ask the question, people will talk for like 20 minutes straight. I may not even say a word, but you nailed it perfectly. It took like 3 minutes. You clearly have done this before.
I'm a salesperson at heart, right? I got to know when to shut up at some point.
One of the reasons why I started this podcast, honestly, Brisa, outside of networking and getting to know people like yourself, it's me asking questions and actually shutting up and letting other people talk. So it's a good skill to actually pick up. Sandler, though, I'm blown away right now. I did not know it was a franchise. I'm very familiar with Sandler, very familiar with their methodologies, great on the enterprise sales side, but I had no idea it was a franchise model. So were you working with the franchise owner in the Texas area? Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
So Sandler Training, their corporate's based out of Baltimore.
Right.
When David Sandler passed away, I want to say he passed away back in 97. I was extremely young at that time and I never met him, right? But just when you're in the Sandler process, you drink the Kool-Aid and you get to learn all this stuff. But when David Sandler passed away, new CEO took over, and that's really where the franchise model kind of took place.
Right.
I think it was a little bit before he passed away, but yeah, there's franchises all over the U.S. There's some international ones. I know they have some in Mexico, some in Colombia. And I worked for the Texas franchisee based out of Dallas.
Wow. There's one, so I'm in California right now. There's one in San Ramon, a training area, my set. And I took a few courses, actually. I'm a huge fan of Sandler. I follow a medic approach now in our business that we do, but Sandler, once again, for enterprise sales to really that long sales cycle, really pinpointing, really understanding who the buyer is, who the economic leader is, who the decision maker is, all that, it really helped out in terms of really putting everything into perspective. So no, I'm a huge fan. Did you have you mentioned that you worked with consulting. You took a consultative approach, or were you working with consulting companies as your niche market, or was it kind of like all the above?
All of the above. So what was different between us as a franchise and other franchises, other Sandler franchises, is that a lot of times a California franchise may just strictly focus on training, right? We just want to teach people the process. That's it. The end, no more.
That's exactly what they were doing on my end.
Well, yeah. So there's that, right? A lot of them go that route because, essentially, franchise fees, that's what you pay for, right?
Right.
To be teaching people the process. What was different between a lot of those franchises that go that route and the one that I was a part of was we took more of a consultative approach, right? It wasn't just sales training, right? Sales training was definitely a part of it, but our goal was to make sure that you have the right processes, you have the right people, so that when you go through the training sticks, right? Otherwise, what we found, and I'm sure a lot of companies find as well, is you can spend a lot of money in training, tons of money in training, But just because you train someone does not necessarily mean that they're going to sell something, right? It just means they're going to know what to do. But there's a lot of things that are holding them back from achieving those things. And one of the amazing things about David Sandler, and you've experienced this yourself too, Mike, going through the process, it's, being a salesperson is so much more than just what skills do you have, right? Do you know the right time to close? Do you know the right way to start the conversation? Do you know how to set expectations? Do you know how to find the pain? That's a skill set, right? And it's great to have that skill set. But one of the best things that I took away from learning the process, and I tell anyone that I know that David, just going through the Sandler process was life-changing for me, is because they focus so much on the internal parts of the person, right? What are some of the things that might hold me back internally from doing, from setting expectations? What are some of the things that might hold me back from really digging into someone's pain, right? Because chances are I may know what to do, but if internally there's something telling me don't do it, or there's something holding me back, then chances are either I'm not going to do it or I'm not going to be great at delivering it. So I really, me now, while I run my business, is one of the things that I still take away now, right? It's the fact that it's not so much what do you know, it's really what's going on internally that may stop you from doing the things that you know how to do. So
yeah. Absolutely. And when it comes to these franchises, do you all have, is it like a commission-based process too? Or is it just kind of like a day-to-day with certain KPIs or goals that you have to hit and you get some sort of bonus? How does that process work? Because I'd imagine someone that's training sales also wants to be compensated like sales. Or am I wrong in that regard?
So it all depends on how they want to structure their business, right? I can only, there's different structures. Every franchisee can run their business however. But for us, what we did, it was just straight, right? Straight flat fee. For this amount, you get consulting this way, consulting that way, and training this way, right? So I have heard of other companies just getting commission off of whatever the salesperson going through training takes, right? And which is super smart, because what other way to show that your stuff really works than to get commission off of someone else doing it, right? That means that you have to not only be an amazing trainer, but you have to be an amazing coach as well. So I have heard of companies going down that route, not just in the sales training space, but just marketing and social media and just different industries as well. So what better way to really put your money where your mouth is than to be getting commission based on your results, right?
Yep. You know what? I completely agree with that. I also have started noticing a lot of businesses that go into the savings space as subject matter experts. So let's say, hey, you pay X amount for this specific CRM. What if I completely give you similar functionality, reorganize everything, and end up saving you 50%, and I keep 20% of that? Is that something you're interested in? That seems ingenious in my opinion, because I'd be like, yeah, go for it. If you're gonna put more money in my pocket and put some money in yours, by all means. So any of that happening in terms of you go ahead and if you make an X amount, it sounds like that's the case, right? If you make like $100,000, let's say, bring me the $20,000 check, and that would be my payment.
Back in the day when I was in the industry, that was unheard of, right? Because we were just also used to, this is what it is monthly, or this is what it is for a year, right? With time, it's turning more into what you just said, right? It's getting equity in the company. There's companies that their sales deals include getting equity off of the client's company. That's becoming more and more common than just it's $5,000 a month and that's it, right? Yep. So at my time in the sales training industry, it was brand new concept. Now it's the concept, right? And it's freaking genius. And then on top of that, just affiliate marketing is becoming such a huge thing now too, which again is genius, because what better way to sell your stuff than to have someone else sell your stuff and you didn't have to do anything for it, right? Besides pay them 10, 20, 30%, whatever much you
Yeah.
want to pay. But it's just literally money in your pocket that you didn't have to sit there and have a sales call for. You didn't have to sit there and service. Somebody else is doing it and just getting a percentage off of it. So it's
Absolutely.
interesting to see just how are people going out and getting sales now than 5, 10 years ago.
Yep. And that's actually my key for sales. I take a personable approach. I'm all about building the relationship. But I think the number one key in sales is the key to innovation. Really going outside, going against the grain. Like, okay, if we can't make this work, how do we make that work? What about plan C, D, F? There's always something we could work out. It's just a matter of collaborating together and figuring it out. So I love the fact that people are starting to use those tactics. Some of them are a little cheesy, don't get me wrong, but it's working. So improve growth. Tell me a little bit about the actual niche market for your, because you mentioned that you have a training approach now. You went from a consulting approach with Sandler, and now you have a training approach. Why that pivot, and what's your ideal market that you want to train?
Yeah, good question. So when I go into a networking event and I talk about what we do, I always talk about training, just because that's typically what people know, right? However, you and I both know that you can show up at a sales call and they want A, but then you know that they really need B and they really need C and then they really need D, right?
Don't forget about F
So
now. Don't forget about
an
F.
F, and they may not even want F because F is too expensive, or it just doesn't make sense, or it's not the right time, and can you just give me A, right? Um, but so what we do is we teach companies how to hire strong salespeople. So I consider ourselves a training company first. Why a training company first? Uh, People don't know what to do when hiring salespeople, right? They throw stuff against the wall and they say, hey, well, hopefully this sticks, right? It's very hard to do consulting and coaching on a process that does not work. And I found just from my experience doing this, which is almost a decade at this point, I have found that companies just don't know what to do, right? They have no idea. Where do I start? What do I look for? What questions do I ask? What kind of an interview should I run? What should I look for in the phone interview? What should I look for in the first interview? How do I even position myself as the best company for them? And recruiting is one of those things that it's so obvious to people and they think that it's so easy to go find someone until they go on out and they find someone that doesn't work out. And then they say, oh my gosh, this is harder than what I thought. Well, let's do something different. And then they tweak one thing, and then that one thing still gives them the same result. So I consider ourselves a training company first because I have learned that it's extremely difficult to coach you and consult with you on a process that doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
In the maybe 100 companies that I've worked with, maybe 1 to 2 have had a good process where I probably didn't bring in any value. So they have to be able to know what is the process that we need to follow so that consulting and coaching becomes the second part with it. So essentially what they're learning is they're learning a process, right? Because it's the same thought process that we were talking about earlier, right? What sense does it make for me to just train you on something that doesn't make sense for the time being, right? I'm not saying training's wrong. I'm saying training the wrong people and at the wrong time is wrong, right? So what we do at our company is we teach them a process that they can follow to be able to find salespeople that can and will perform.
Love it. And what about target market, Brisa? Do you work with like SaaS companies, nonprofits? Where do you see that you bring the most value out of your organization?
So we are not industry agnostic, but we do work a lot with various industries. Those various industries are anywhere. The top three are technology companies are a big one, right? And they're huge for us because not only is technology such a huge sector anywhere you go, but it's also one of those sectors that has the biggest challenges finding strong salespeople. Reason being, they're very technical, right? people in that industry tend to be extremely technical. And although they know what they're selling and they know the ins and outs of what they're selling, does not necessarily mean that they can translate and have a conversation, right?
Amen.
So that's a huge industry for us. And the other industry too is consulting services. And consulting services, because engineers don't see themselves as salespeople. They see themselves as engineers. So when they show up on a prospect call, guess what they're doing? They're giving
Engineering.
all this free advice and getting nothing in return because that's what they're supposed to do, when in reality, they should be asking questions to figure out whether or not this person's going to be able to buy from them, or whether or not this person is even somebody to be qualifying or having a conversation with or keeping the conversation with. So technology, consulting services are huge for us, accounting, lawyers. I mean, just anybody in that industry that doesn't think that they're a salesperson, but they are huge for us.
Love it. Yeah. When it comes to engineering people, they have this brilliant mind and they're so excited to talk about those things. But you're absolutely right. When they're talking about it, it's like they're pretty much giving their brilliance away. There's nothing wrong with that per se. And there's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of content out there where people are kind of doing something, but there's a lot of affiliate marketing and stuff on the back end too that's happening. One thing I noticed about technical people, and this actually boggles me the most, is they never ask for the sale. They talk about their product all day long and this and that. But when it comes down to, so are you ready to proceed and actually put trust into me? They don't ask that. And I've worked with a couple of people myself on a consulting scale as just a favor, nothing professional. But it's like, why aren't you asking for this? Like, what's going on? Are you seeing some of that yourself? Like, sometimes they're so busy talking about their product, but they totally forget that they're selling their product.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it in the technology industry, in the real estate industry, in the consulting industry. And here's why, right? We're all human. And it goes back to, I may know what to do, right? I may have gone through all the training in the world, and I've gone through this program and this program, and I'm certified this and I'm certified that, and I've been in sales for 10 plus years. But just because you have the skill, right? You know you're supposed to close, right? Because that's a skill. Teaching them when to close at the end of the call, that's a skill that you can teach, right? That's a skill that you can learn. But me knowing what to do and when to do it does not necessarily mean I'm going to do it. Yep. So then we got to think about, well, what's stopping me from doing it? And that's really where your internal weaknesses come in, yep. Right? What are some of those things holding you back? What are some of those self-limiting things that you're telling yourself? If I tell myself, there's no way you're going to go out and get this sale. There's no way you're going to get it, right? Guess what you're not going to be doing? You're not going to be asking for it, right? Because internally, you're telling yourself you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it, which that's a completely topic of it in itself, right? But if internally I'm telling myself I'm not going to do it, then we're going to get to the point in which it's going to be time to close, right? And I know it's time to close and I know how to close, but those internal weaknesses are the ones really stopping me from doing it, right? Those self-limiting thoughts that I tell myself and I carry along with me when I go on the sales calls. So it's interesting to see. And that's really going back to what I was saying earlier is Sandler training was life-changing for me because it wasn't just about when to do something and how to do it. It was about internally, what are some of the things that might hold you back? What are some of the negative talk that I might tell myself before a call that may trip me up on the end, right? Sales is really about psychology, right? Yep. You learn your psychology, you learn their psychology, and you learn how to bridge the gap between the two, have a conversation, figure out what do they want to do, what's stopping them from doing it, and what's the gap stopping them from doing it, get the deal closed, that's at the end, right? Couldn't have said it better. There's a lot of people that have the skills, but they don't have the right mindset that will push them over that gap. So I find that everywhere. Every industry I've seen it tons of times.
And you know what the funny part is that lack of confidence. As technical those people are sitting across from you, they may not be asking for the sale, but they know how to pick up weakness as well. And just a slight of body language or maybe the low energy, anything at all where you seem a little timid could automatically be like, well, why the hell should I give him or her money? I mean, not even confident enough to ask for this, but I'm going to be putting my trust in them. So, yeah, I totally agree. That picks up a lot. So let's talk about the pandemic. And by the way, congratulations on the baby, 11 months. Kudos.
It's a girl. She's 11 months.
Oh, wow. So 30-day-old baby here. Just became a papa myself. You probably might hear that.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. You might actually hear him crying in the background also.
I was going to say, and I know you typically don't hear this, but it does get better. I know you do hear that.
Oh, every day.
But I do not. I loved every stage of my baby, but the first 3 months, Mike, oh my gosh, they kick your butt. They kick your butt. I mean, this girl has kicked my butt for the last 11 months, but oh my gosh, the first 3 months are insane.
I almost yawned right there because, not because you're boring, it's because I stayed up until 3 a.m. last night. And I feel like it's me staying up late, wife getting up early. And yeah, but I've never smiled so wide before. So it's a blessing for sure.
Yeah, they're awesome.
But they are COVID babies. So, and you started a business after becoming a mommy. That is in the worst pandemic of the century.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And how? Why would you take that risk?
I always knew I was going to go my own route. I've known that since I've known that for a long time, since I was little, maybe 16, 17. I always knew I was going to go out and do my own thing.
Love it.
The pandemic just kind of, it was several things for me. You first kid, right? You don't know what to expect, and then they're here, and then they really change your life and makes you kind of rethink things about how you've been living life and how you want to live life for them and what kind of time you want to have for them. And, so having her was a huge driver for me doing this. The pandemic was the second one, right? So before all this happened with the pandemic just starting and everything else, we had already figured out daycare for her, because the lady that we signed her up with, she was like a 2 years in advance type of person. So luckily we were able to get in like within, I think, like 9 months. Like she had an opening and the stars aligned to where she was able to take care of her, right? So we had paid deposit. It was good to go. I was 7 months pregnant when the pandemic hit. And When she was born, we were right in the middle of the pandemic, right? Like the hospital, being at the hospital in June when the pandemic had just started, it was crazy, right? Typically, they want you to stay there 2 to 3 days, depending on your insurance. And this time, they highly suggested for us to go back home because cases were going up and you have to have your mask on at all times. You have to get COVID tested. It was just different times, right? And first time having a baby, you don't know what to expect. So pandemic hit, we had her. And then I thought, what? The pandemic's not getting better. And we're not about to expose her newborn to be with a bunch of different kids and their families and the lady that takes care of them. So she stayed with us. So we lost the spot at the daycare. So she stayed with us. And I thought, wow, I can't go back to work either, right? So what better time to do this than now? You've always wanted to do it. Your baby's born and she's here. And what better time to start something than now, right? I joke about, hey, what better time to start a business? But it really is the best time to start a business because one, people are buying, and two, there's nowhere to go but up, right? Yeah. It's just really a matter of just sticking with it and going through it. And it's hard because they don't sleep, which means you don't sleep. and you got to go out and get clients and service clients and network and grow business and do a bunch of stuff on your own. But now that I've been at this for 6+ months, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. It's just such a great fit, and I totally understand why so many people go this route. It's stressful. It really is. I mean, there's not a day when I don't think, oh my gosh, how much easier would it be to just get a job and get paid on the 1st and the 15th? But, being able to hang out with her and have the flexibility to just kind of do my own thing and go out and make more money than I have ever before, and help companies just get to where they want to be, right? And actually see them change. It's just so rewarding to see all that. And the fact that I get to have the opportunity to do that, I feel so blessed to be in that position.
Absolutely. No, kudos and congratulations on that. I mean, outside of becoming a mother, that's probably, I think, the hardest job in the world, to be honest. I see my wife, and I was blessed to have an amazing support system. She's amazing. My mother-in-law, my overall family, I feel like that's really makes this process a lot easier. But there's still a lot that's on you. End of the day, you're the CEO of that baby, and you have to make the decisions, and whatever happens to your baby is on you, regardless of what anyone says and does. So outside of having the responsibility of having your physical baby, having your career baby at the same time, and embracing that and rewarding experience, kudos to you. That's amazing. So let's talk about we're first generation, from what I understood when we first talked a little bit. And in my parents, just a little background on me, we lived in a communist society in Eastern Europe. So starting businesses are already outside of the gram. It was either you have to go to school, get a job, and have kids and die, basically. What was that like for your family to say, "Hey, I'm starting a business, guys"? How did they respond to something like that?
Well, I guess I'm a little different in the sense that, so I was born in Mexico City and I was raised by a single mom. Moved here when I was 12, and the only people that I have from my side in the U.S. is my mom and my sister. I don't have any aunts. I don't have any cousins. I don't have any uncles. It's just literally my mom and my sister. And we're not super close with family in Mexico. I mean, there's just so much distance, and we weren't a close family to begin with. And my mom left her country to give my sister and I a better life, right? So it's just, my mom is so proud, and it makes me so happy to be able to make her so proud. And I was the first person to graduate college in the entire family. And I say that because I knew that when we moved to the U.S. and my mom was going to make the sacrifice of leaving her family, leaving her country, leaving her language, leaving the food, oh my gosh, to bring me here, and being a single mom, which I'm a mom with a husband, and I go crazy every day. My mom was a single mom with 2 kids, and she had me as a kid, which I was a crazy kid. I knew that it wasn't going to be in vain, right? I knew that I was going to go to school. I knew that I was going to go out and do something that she would have wanted to do at some point that she didn't have the opportunity to do so in her country, right? My mom is an extremely strong woman. She's the biggest warrior I've ever met. Highly educated, went out and just went to go get an education so that she could go out and get a better job for us, so that she could be able to provide better for us here in the U.S. And, I wasn't going to fall short from that. Right. It just didn't make sense to me that my mom was going out and chasing all this stuff, and I was going to fall behind. So she's super proud, but it was also expected. Right. Because we were raised with the mentality of, we didn't come here just to be average. We came here to kill it. Right. So it's my job to go out and kill it just as much as my mom did. My sister is a law student at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. she's out there killing it, right? So we knew, just the three of us, the little trio, we knew that we're gonna make this work and we're gonna kill it because we came here for a reason, and that's to have a better life for us, but not only us, our next generation, right? So now that I have my daughter, it's just so amazing for me to see how my mom not only changed my life, but she also changed my daughter's life, by just bringing us here. So it's just, you got to take advantage of what you have, and you got to make the most of what you have. And that's really what I'm trying to do for them and trying to do for my next generation.
That's a beautiful story, Risa. You got the cuatro now, the four power women and
The four women, yeah.
the Fantastic Four. I don't know. So no, that's a beautiful story, and I'm immigrant as well. We had a refugee situation which got us to America, so I could completely resonate with you. I had both parents, so it was probably a little easier for me than you with my little sister. But I will say though that coming out of a communist culture like that, my mom, who women were not allowed to have jobs basically or anything like that. My mom ran the household when it came to the finances and obviously the maintaining a home and making sure we get an education and a clothes and all that whatnot. Have you experienced any sort of additional hardships as a Latina that's also a founder in America right now? Have you found that starting a business is a little bit harder for you as opposed to other business owners around you?
And it goes, no, to answer your question, no. And it goes back to how I was raised, right? I was raised to go after what you want no matter what. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your name is. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It really doesn't matter. Go out there and get it. So I'm of the mentality, I was raised under the mentality of it's not a problem unless you make it a problem. Having said that, there is a huge disparity between the color of your skin, where you come from, your sex, whatever that may be, right? And that gap does exist. And there's a lot of history that goes along with that and a lot of society issues that go along with that. For me personally, I was raised to not make it an issue. So what I do is I don't make it an issue. And if it becomes an issue, then we have a conversation about why is it an issue, right? And when you have a conversation about why is it an issue, then the person you're having that conversation with soon finds out that it really isn't an issue. So why are we talking about it?
Yeah. Because I could tell you, because my mom, when she wanted to be a nurse, and when she got here, she's like, "No, I don't want to try that. I don't want to be a nurse." And we kept telling her, she says she's going to be hard for her to become one. When we pushed her towards it, she had no idea how strong she really was because of the insecurities that her country left her with. So, and I mean, there was some sexist stuff around. It's getting better now. I think we could tell that, but it seems like it never stopped you. But what about the people around you? Do you feel like at some point in time they're like, she's not going to be able to make it because of her background or something like that?
Yeah. I would say that it hasn't been specifically like that because of the times that we're in, right? So I started my business in September 2020. So George Floyd and everything else that 2020 brought along had already happened, right? So when that happened, associations, businesses, institutions, they started looking at people like you and I different, right? Yeah. So I haven't encountered that as much in the last year since all this really started. Beforehand, the biggest issue that I would have was my age, right? The fact that I'm a 20-something-year-old talking to CEOs and presidents, right? It wasn't so much she's a woman, she's Hispanic. It was more your age, right? The fact that how is it that you get to sit here and talk to me about how to hire salespeople or how to increase my sales or how to optimize my sales department when you haven't owned a business yourself, right? So the challenge was always, you're too young to be talking to me about this. And the best way to address something is to talk about it, right? So what I learned was to call the elephant in the room. And when I would go into sales calls, I would say, hey, do you think the fact that I'm young is going to be an issue for us today? And that just gave me, first of all, you feel like a badass saying it, right? At first, the delivery kind of sucks, but then you get comfortable and you're like, damn, that sounded good. So then you say it enough times, and then they look at you like, oh, snap, did this girl just really call me out? Because I really was thinking that, but now I like it because she called it out, right? So as soon as I started addressing the elephant in the room, my conversations just got so much better. My closing ratio got so much better. My clients went up, satisfaction went up, everything went up. So that was really my biggest challenge, was more just the fact that I was young in that industry.
Wow. That's amazing. So you pretty much call it out in advance because you probably noticed it from initial prospects. Like, I think they're looking at me like a young, fresh-nosed pup as opposed to actually someone that's been around the block and knows what they're doing. So that's a great strategy. And it all comes back to that confidence, right? Of having confidence within yourself and knowing what you could deliver and making sure no one is better than you and no one's worse than you when it comes to these meetings. So no, kudos. Where do you want to take this business, Brisa? What's your ideal goal here? Do you want to have employees? Do you want to continue riding it with just the way you've been doing it? What's best for you?
No, I think the one I've been doing it works for now, right? But essentially, for you to be able to scale, you have to bring people in. So our goal is to bring in our first employee by the beginning of next year. And essentially, what we want to have is we want to have a training program that's just an online training program so that it doesn't need me or anyone else to go out and deliver it, right? So it's thinking of ways of how do I replicate me without you needing me to constantly be teaching you or to constantly be teaching my future employees on what to do, right? And a great way of doing that is just really doing things online. And that's really what people want more now too, especially in this environment that we live in. So our goal is to bring our first employee by early next year, and then creating an online training program that doesn't need me to be the one doing it. We'll still continue to do the training sessions just because clients enjoy them. It brings them results. We'll continue doing the recruiting, but it wouldn't be so much me doing it. I want to be able to teach people. I want to be able to bring in employees and teach them that process so that they can go out and they can change lives and they can know what it feels like to be able to go into a company and change the CEO's life, change the company's structure, change the company's direction. There's just such a great sense of satisfaction when you go into a company and you know that them following the process or them following your advice has led them to an increase in sales. I don't want to keep that feeling to myself. I want to be able to teach people the process so that they can in turn give that feeling to someone else. So we're looking to grow the company, looking to do an online training program, looking to grow other people into the role. And then eventually at some point, I don't want to do this forever, right? Because there's other things that I want to do. So I would eventually, in just 5-10 years down the road, be selling the business.
Love it. Good plan. And last question for you, Brisa. We're both new parents. We both done okay in sales, but what advice are you going to give your child when she decides to take her journey? Are you going to ask her, do you want to be a business owner? You should go get a job? Or where do you plan on pointing your daughter into to the direction when it comes to the professional career?
That's a deep question. You know, I despite everything that happened last year, 2020 was a sucky year. It really was, right?
Amen, sister.
But it just brought so much change that needed to happen, right? It needed to happen. It was inevitable for us to keep living the way that we were living and then expect a different result, right? So 2020 had to happen in order for all this change to come in. I want to raise my daughter in the way that my mom raised me, right? Which is, you don't take no shit. You go after what you want. There's no excuses. You do what you want. And the fact that you're a woman and you're young and you're Hispanic doesn't mean anything, right? So not only do I want to leave her with those lessons, but I also want to leave her with the fact that sales is the profession, right? Everyone, and I don't say that just because we're in a sales podcast and because you and I come from sales, but it really is the profession. If you learn how to sell, if you learn how to talk to people, if you get to learn what is it that people want and what's stopping them from getting it, if you learn that, you you don't need anything else, right? Because even if you become a doctor, you know how to be the best doctor out there. Even if you become a lawyer, you know how to become the best lawyer out there. Even if you become a business owner, you know how to be the best business owner out there, because nothing happens until you sell something. And I feel that the sales profession gets such a bad just reputation because of we feel like they think that we're pushy or we're sleazy or we're just out after the money. But the sales profession is one of the best professions that you could possibly do for yourself, do for the business, and really do for the world as a whole. Because essentially you're helping people how to get what they want, right? Nothing happens until you sell something. So it's
Absolutely.
that would be my number one thing is you need to know how to sell. And once you know how to sell, everything else just kind of takes care of itself.
I'm not gonna lie, that was one of the best responses anyone ever given me, because I say this all the time. We're all in sales. You know, I sold my wife to marry my crazy ass. I sold my parents to let me borrow the car when I was 16, and did I put some scratches on it? Yes, but I still sold them. They sold me to become a Christian. All these things that, you know, we're all constantly in sales. So I couldn't agree more. I feel like learning that one skill, you could go into legal, you could go into insurance, you could become a doctor if you want and sell people on your theories, your journeys, etc. You could pretty much do anything. So that was one of the best responses I had, Brisa. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for taking the time. You are an inspiration to not just women, but all mommies out there, all
Thank you.
entrepreneurs. Continue crushing it out there. I can't wait to see you bring on your employees and see those LinkedIn pops ups. And please stay in touch. I'm really excited to see what's next for you.
Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care of yourself.
Thanks.